After thorough testing, I recently changed my everyday OC spray to Palm Personal Defense Spray. It's nasty stuff and I recommend it highly. Hey everybody, today on Active Self-Protection Extra, I've got actually a really special treat. It's an acquaintance of mine, a friend I'd even call him, Stephen Gutowski, who is a journalist. Now this is interesting stuff because normally we hear, journalist media, oh no, right? They're gonna hate us, but I would actually say just the opposite. But still learning the principles of journalism, right? And not learning, but practicing.
Right.
And so I got an interesting bit in question here. Everybody, I know you were in Richmond, and so everybody's asking you about Virginia and what happened at the rally and those things. But I want to ask you instead, how do you balance that as somebody whose professional ethics say you have to be impartial about this, right? Mm-hmm. Now I know, and a lot of people are going to say, yeah, but they don't anymore. No, I think that the journalism standard is report the facts.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I work at the Washington Free Beacon, right? It's a editorially conservative site. Mm-hmm. But the way we operate is like you were just talking about, with traditional journalistic methods and ethics. So we try to operate like the Associated Press would operate, or the Washington Post, the New York Times, and we just have a conservative editorial position. Mm-hmm. And so when I write a piece or when I go out and report on something, I do my best to be as fair as possible to, if I'm writing about a gun control group and something they're doing, I'll reach out to them for comment so that their position can be represented fairly in the piece, Like I wrote about March for Our Lives. Their tax forms, their first 990s were released earlier this year, and I wrote up that, 95% of their funding comes from donations over $100,000.
Right.
But I reached out to them for their comment to see if they had anything to say about that, to be fair to them. Maybe the story doesn't reflect well on whatever. The story is what the story is.
It is
That's
what it is.
The facts are.
Mm-hmm.
But we always try to be fair to anyone we're reporting on and give them an opportunity to have, their say in the piece. And it's important anyway, because sometimes you could, if you misread something or something, you're going to go and it keeps you from looking like an idiot. Yeah. So like there's reasons that those sort of ethics of journalism exist, and are important and are something that we follow at the Free Beacon, and that I strive to be, as good as possible on when I'm doing my reporting as well.
So how do you, as a journalist, then control? Because we all have biases, right? We have a worldview. We have, this is the way I see things, and you have political opinions. Yeah. You have personal ideas of the way things be. How do you control that when you get to the professionalism of writing as a journalist?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, right? That's like. They teach classes on that in universities and so forth, and it's a long-running debate about how to best deal with your personal biases when you're
now.
Reporting.
Notice it's not how to not have personal biases. You do. We all do.
Sure, everyone has political opinions. I think it's about recognizing what your personal opinions are, your worldview is, and making sure that you're not just feeding into something without checking it first. You know what I mean? Like, there's confirmation bias is one of the
big deal.
One of the biggest things I think in journalism where people go wrong, especially with guns, because most journalists, I think you're right in terms of a lot of people will say, oh, journalists they're especially any journalist in a major outlet like NBC, Washington Post, they're all just liars, and they hate gun, and they don't care about getting things right. I don't think that's true.
I don't think
that's true of the reporters themselves. There's lots of commentators are that way.
Yes,
sure.
Yes. There's a difference between being a reporter and a commentator.
Absolutely. There should be a difference. There should be a major difference. I think for most reporters there is a difference. And what you see getting a lot of people in trouble in the mainstream press is that personally they're liberals. I think personally they probably have liberal opinions on politics. And then they don't have the knowledge to understand when they're getting something wrong or something sort of too good to be true, and they don't have the knowledge base to understand that whatever the gun control group is saying to them or a Democratic politician is not necessarily true.
Right.
And you get into that trap of like, this sounds like something that's true, and it sounds like a good story, so I'm going to run with it. And so I think a lot of the problem comes down with knowledge of the issue when you're talking about firearms.
Yeah.
Because there's a big lack of basic understanding of firearms. I think most reporters want to get it right, and most reporters are willing to learn but they don't have a lot of resources that to go off of, and their editors
Well,
don't necessarily help them with that. And
then if we won't step in, like me as a pro Second Amendment guy, if I won't step in and help,
this is a big thing that I try to do with my fellow reporters. It's like I have a resource. I have put together essentially a PowerPoint presentation with some of the basic facts of like what is semi-automatic versus fully automatic, because a lot of people don't understand that.
Right.
What and then like some of the political stuff, like what is the gun show loophole? What does that mean?
Meaningless phrase.
Which is, it doesn't. It's kind of it's a misleading phrase, obviously, because it doesn't. Yeah. Whether or not you have to perform a background check doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you're at a gun show.
Yeah, I mean, it's irrelevant.
That's not how the law works. But so there's a lot of these sorts of things that are sort of basic understanding of both how guns work and how gun policy and law works that a lot of reporters who aren't experts on the issue don't understand. They have the same basic misconceptions that a lot of the average public has. Mm-hmm. And so if you can help reach out to them and explain it to them, I think that helps improve coverage overall. That's my point of view on it, at least. Yeah. It can be frustrating. You know,
well, do you find frustration as a journalist? I mean, I think obviously you're well received here at SHOT Show, pretty much, because I think you've earned a reputation for being fair and being receptive. But do you find frustration trying to live in that place of providing fair and balanced coverage?
You know, sometimes it gets frustrating when you see like the same mistakes get made over and over again in media coverage. Yeah. That it's just so often that, like the gun show loophole, for instance, is a super popular one that people just don't understand what that talking point means. Right. What, how the law works. And so when you go to talk about proposals that are coming through as a political journalist, and you make that same mistake at a major publication that I've seen 100 times before, it gets frustrating for me. And sometimes, I'm human too. I'll overreact sometimes, where you're better off reaching out privately to the reporter if they're like a reasonable reporter. They're good. They do good work usually.
I think you made
but they made some mistake. It's better. I find that it's better off to try and talk to them privately and like inform them of why it was wrong or than go out in public and like yell at them and
here's a pro tip.
Get my followers to go and yell at them too. Like that. I
Pro
do
tip,
that
that
sometimes.
works for regular life too, right? Instead of just blasting someone on their Facebook wall, maybe send them a private message. You go, hey man, I'm so sure about that, or whatever.
It's certainly like a sort of guideline for life. You're always better off,
right?
But I'm human too, so sometimes I'll do that. I'll get frustrated. I'll get angry. I'll say, and then the reporter will be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Like, okay, maybe they should have known, but it would have been better if I'd just gone to them privately and been like, hey, this is what was wrong, instead of yelling at them publicly. It's never like better to do that, I think. If someone is just a bad...
I mean, if I'm standing on my side and yelling, and you're standing on your side and yelling, and I'm throwing rocks from here, and you're throwing rocks from there, we're never going to find any
It's the old saying of like, you win more flies with honey than vinegar, right? So it's the same idea. So, but the frustration, that's where it comes out for me. Like, that's one of my flaws, is like, I'll jump on social media and like yell at, essentially call someone out, instead of like, okay, there's a better, more effective way of doing this.
Well, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because I've said this many times. I say it on the channel. I talk about it all the time. Somebody has to be the adult in the room. Yeah. Like, and we get this thing right now that, I mean, it's a very polarizing issue, and I think, the culture war is this big polarized thing, right? Mm-hmm. I try not to fight the culture wars. I just want to help people as best I can. But at some point, I feel like somebody has to be the adult in the room, and when everybody else is screaming, say, okay, everybody, let's lower our voices and let's talk like adults. How do you think we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that also goes back to sort of the ideals of journalism and the ethics involved there. Is like you're supposed to deal with the facts. You're not supposed to rely on emotion and just run with your opinion. Yeah. If you're a hard news journalist, so that helps, is like trying to keep those things in mind.
But I think a lot of times today we use facts as gotchas.
Yeah.
We go, I've got a barb for you. Oh, you're wrong, that's a problem. Instead of going, I hear what you're saying there, but I don't know that the facts speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, and what you're talking about is like, just like what I was talking about earlier, it's sort of an approach thing. There's different approaches to it. One approach, honestly, you could go on Twitter. I could have 10 times as many followers as I now if I went on there and just was constantly putting out like red meat, like rah statements, yelling at liberals about their bad gun opinions. I could have way more followers doing that, but I don't think I would be as effective in what I try to accomplish in terms of like informing people about the issue. That's the thing. Like a lot of media these days, especially social media, really rewards you for the
Outrage.
performative outrage. Yes, performative outrage is a big part of our social media culture. That's just the reality of it. And cable news as well.
Big time.
Like, it's a big part of it. Like, a lot of cable news is less on the news and more on opinion and yelling and screaming at each other. And it's performative outrage, and it's something that gets people excited, gets people to watch. But does it inform people?
Right.
Probably not.
Does it help change minds and souls?
Right.
I think no.
I don't think it does either.
So
I mean, sometimes, you know, righteous indignation can be important, but like, if you're doing it all, if you're at 10 all the time,
it's just not helpful. So, guys, I think that what I hear, what I've learned, you know, just interacting with you is that I think that professional ethic matters. I try to not have my own confirmation bias, and I try to question my assumptions all the time. And reaching across that aisle to say, let me educate. My goal here is not to win a debate, it's to win a heart. And so if I'm going to do that, I'm going to educate. And the only way we do that is by swimming in circles that aren't just echo chambers.
And I think you have to be like willing to be honest, and that you're not necessarily always going to be right 100% of the time either.
Oh man,
you know?
good.
It sometimes I'll get things wrong, for sure, and that's another part of what we try to abide by at the freebie. If we have some statement of fact that's wrong, we'll correct it.
Gotta
correct it, and you say this was wrong, and we apologize for the error or what. Like, that's important thing to do, because not everyone does that, and it really hurts your credibility with people. Like, you know, outside of like the group of people that are just always going to be on your side, you know, the tribalistic aspect of it. Everyone else, it hurts your credibility if you're not willing to be honest. If you're not willing to say, I'm human too, we made a mistake, we're sorry for the mistake, here's the correction. You know, I think that's an important thing.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, I know everybody, and you've done a bunch of interviews here recently because of, you know, all the stuff that's going on in Virginia, and I get that, but actually I think this is a more important discussion because it's not localized to one thing, but it's about how we interact as people. And I think, I'm going to tell you, the folks that are watching tend to be gun rights folks. They tend to be, you know, self-defense folks.
Yeah,
let's be the adults in the room. You know, let's be the ones who say, guys, be adults. Admit when you're wrong. Reach out, learn a thing or two. Tell me why you believe that, and get the facts. And when you get them wrong, say so.
And it doesn't mean you have to like roll over.
Right.
You don't have to pretend that you're wrong when you're not.
No,
right?
but
I mean, never give up on the facts. Never say something that's false just to placate somebody else.
Right.
You know, it's not like that. You're not just being like a lapdog. But you're trying to be like a more genuine human.
Right.
Or a Christian in our case, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just think that has in the long run a better effect.
Yeah. So where are the best places for people to watch your content, man?
Well, so we have my show Range Time is on the Free Beacon YouTube. We just had a new episode for the Richmond rally, which we were at in the crowd. It was crazy. There were so many people. We got lots of great interviews.
Nice.
So if you want to see what really happened there on the ground,
You got it.
You go watch put
a link in the description.
That Range Time episode with at the Free Beacon YouTube, and then I'm on Twitter at Stephen Gutowski, and of course freebeacon.com will have all my original reporting. So
it's fun having good journalists out there in the world and people that we can trust and to say we're going to do the best we can. Stephen, really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.